Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. My friends, why are we all here? We are gathered here because to varying extent, all of us believe that this world is not okay, and this world must, by many, be changed. The challenge is how. How do we engage this world with the subjects we are discussing to translate this into real action? As an NGO doing disaster and development, we, like you, began to realize that education alone does not always result in behavioral change. I can show you 1,000 pictures of refugees. You would have seen but 1,000 more. But we began to realize that when empathy kicks in, when people's hearts engage, suddenly their hands must take response. And we have seen huge action resulting from people engaging because their hearts first connected. How did this start? A few years ago, we had an anniversary, and instead of doing a 5-star hotel fundraising dinner, we brought CEOs out to this. We gave them a pile of trash, and for 24 hours, we took from them their watch, their wallet, their cell phone, their laptop. We gave them rubble. We let them build houses, and they slept on the ground. We gave them a chance to eat, eating with their hands, food that came from nations in need. We even allowed them to make a road, forced them to make a road by breaking rocks with their bare hands, understanding what it's like to create gravel. For 24 hours they lived in these conditions. We thought they would run, but they came back and they said this was huge. They said, I want my office to feel what I'm feeling, but I cannot do this for 24 hours. Can you do a 2 or 3 hour program for them to feel? Principals brought teachers. Teachers brought students. And suddenly we were told poverty is only one issue. We need more topics. What about HIV? What about blindness? What about refugees? What about the environment and the poor? And so these programs continued to grow. And it was at this point the United Nations called us. They said every year in Switzerland is the World Economic Forum. They said we can't take all of these world leaders and stick them into refugee camps. But they said we can bring the message to where they are gathered. Please, could you bring your refugee simulation to Switzerland? So we did. Our guns, our barbed wire, our landmines, we shipped it all to Switzerland, and we built this camp right beside the World Economic Forum. And the effect was tremendous. When Ban Ki-moon went through the experience, he found it deeply profound and asked us to run it for many years. When Richard Branson came through, he too was moved by the course of those in need. We then had Sheryl Sandberg from Facebook come through, explore how she could raise the profile of displaced people, and the list went on. We had Jeffrey Sachs, the head of Skype and Wikipedia, HP, TNT, and my friends, what thrilled us, not only hundreds of them, but over the last 10 years, we've seen 130,000 participants go through these programs. And the thing that we've loved most is that we are seeing this world changed. Syrian people, Syrian children are warm and in new schools as a result of people going through these programs. Factories are being strengthened and rebuilt to provide employment for displaced people. Hundreds of thousands of poor farmers' lives have been changed, all of them influenced by people first whose hearts were engaged, and then their hands transformed to strategic action. And it was in this place that the world of disasters entered these experiences.
At the World Economic Forum a couple of years ago, Margareta Wallström asked us to work on a DRR message in a simulation form. So we tweaked one of our simulations. You can see Margareta, Sandra Wu, Kiki Lawal, Oz Ozturk, and others from the DRR community. Afterwards, Margareta and Oz spoke to the participants and said, would you develop a new simulation fully focused on disaster risk reduction? Hence the disaster experience. So we've worked with the UNISDR team not just to provide a physical experience of an earthquake or a flood or a fire, but actually to discuss the nuances, the complexities and challenges of implementing resilience in our real world. So the storyline goes as follows, if you were a participant. As participants, you would live on or below the poverty line. You'd be fish traders in a coastal community on the outskirts of a city in a developing country. Life here is a struggle for everybody. With a minimal income, you must deal with all the usual costs, rent, food, water, and more for your family. Then there's education. Your children work with you on the fishing boats, but you long to see yourself with the money to get them into school at least a few days a week. But there's bad news. You are informed that a new threat has entered your community. Environmental damage has put your community at greater risk than ever before. The one thing in your favor are the lush mangroves. They are providing some protection as they absorb much of the impact of a storm or a tsunami. Nonetheless, the government insists you upgrade your home so you will really be safe. You have two choices. A certified builder will construct a brick home. It'll comply with industry standards, but it's expensive. Another builder will offer you a cheaper alternative, the simple adobe finish. You don't really know if it will stand in the face of an oncoming disaster, but as he points out, it's affordable. Your second problem is your boat. It's your livelihood. In light of the new dangers, the government's built a place where you can store it with a secure mooring, but if you use it, you'll have to pay for that as well. So the families in the simulation set about trying to meet their bills, trying to make the right decisions, trying to trade. And of course, those with people who have special needs, such as mobility challenges, have special challenges too. A number of opportunities arise for you. In light of the heightened risk of disasters, you're invited to join a community group that's going to do a risk assessment. It's not going to cost any money, but you can't trade for your fish while you're away at the meetings. So will you join it? Won't you join it? Also, if you can get your children into schools, they will hear from their teacher about emergency kits, but there's no broader community education here. So if your kids are not in schools, your family won't really know about that. As you can see then, what we're trying to do in this simulation is raise a number of issues which all of you are probably familiar with. It's difficult in a simulation to get all of the issues into one place, into one short space. But we worked with the UNICR to do so, and we work with people who've been through disasters themselves to hear their perspective on the most important issues to hit, people to whom we've shipped humanitarian aid. So, as the people continue trading and living with their challenges, disaster indeed comes upon them in the simulation. There's urgent news that a massive storm is on its way, and everybody's called to stop what they're doing and make for the town hall, which is the strongest building. The pressure of the oncoming typhoon builds as the community responds. Sirens begin to sound, people rush to safety. Sadly, this safe house has not been built with disabilities in mind, so the person in the wheelchair cannot get shelter there, and the disaster costs her life. Those inside the town hall hang on for safety, as even it is not immune from the buffeting of the storm, with its foundations undermined. Once the typhoon has passed, you emerge to see the devastation in your community. It's massive. First aid is required to help those who've been injured, and those who have a disaster kit are in a much better place to help their families than the others. The elderly are particularly at risk, and women have a tougher time. The bodies of those who did not make it are removed from the scene. Amidst the chaos, the children are called away with the promise of special care. Only later do you discover that some of them, in fact, are being taken away for slave labor, while others are photographed for adoption or sex trafficking. But thinking your children are safe, you concentrate on picking up the pieces in the places where you formerly lived. Those who invested in the stronger homes find them still standing. The adobe homes have gone, though, and those families have to begin all over again. Those who secured their boats safely can still fish, but the rest have lost their family business. A developer enters the scene, promising hope to everybody. He plans to build a world-class resort that will increase your income tenfold. He tells you it will bring tourist dollars for years and decades to come. Your kids will not only go to school, they'll go to university. You'll be able to meet medical needs. Your lives will be changed forever. But, and there is a but, developing this new resort means destroying your mangroves, those which have supplied you with protection, provided you with protection for decades. So you are called upon to vote. And so ultimately, through these and other decisions, all the participants in the simulation determine the future of their community and of their personal lives. We finish with a debrief, and that is twofold. Firstly, we really want participants to look at the world they are in and say, how safe is my world? Margareta often says, people tell her, we never imagined this disaster could happen to us. But she says, it's time to imagine. It's time for each of us to realize any of us can be impacted and to do risk assessment in our own lives, look at our own homes, our own workplace, and see what steps are needed. Secondly, we really want participants to care about the safety, not just of themselves, but of others. Even though many communities and countries want to be resilient and fulfill even HFA2, they genuinely may not have the resources. That's why we set this simulation in a weak economy. It's not just families that struggle to implement DRR measures, of course. It's communities, it's governments, it's nations. Some ask, how can we wrestle with the future when we can't even afford today? So we want participants to look not just at their own backyard, but at the situation around the world, to embrace DRR as a global community. Participants might be business people with corporate strengths. They could be lawyers, scientists, government leaders, NGOs, or even others. But as we heard before, many of those who go through the simulations we run then want to get engaged. Refugees are in a new place because business people got engaged after doing the simulation. The same for others in dire poverty, the same for others who need education and more. So our hope ultimately is that everybody who goes through this simulation will be catalyzed to take action on behalf of a world in need. In short, we want people who do this to own the answer to a very simple question, and that is, how safe is your world?